Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Denise Picton joining me today. Hi Denise.
Hi.
So, a little bit about Denise. Following the establishment of a career leading human services, Denise Picton retrained in business and established a management consulting firm that has worked across Australia and Asia for over 30 years. In her 20s, she published short fiction in literary journals and returned to writing to begin work on a series of novels in her 50s. And her book, which I can see in the back there, you've got there, and I've got a copy here. Mine's not quite as colourful as your one, but The Family String is her debut novel. So thanks so much, Denise, for joining us. Just want to let people know as well that if you're watching and you have a question for Denise, please type it in comments and you'll have a chance to win a copy of The Family String thanks to Ultimo Press. So just wondering, Denise, do you want to start off by telling us a bit about The Family String?
Yes, thank you. The book is set in Adelaide, in the suburbs of Adelaide in the 1960s, and it centres on a family who belonged to the Christadelphian Church, which is a church that lots of readers may not have met before. And in that family, there's mum, dad, four kids, although one's now living away from home. And the protagonist in the story is 12-year-old Dorcas, who's an absolute ratbag of a kid. And it's a story about how Dorcas tries to get what she's seeking from life, which is not much, doesn't want much. She just wants to be loved by her mum. She wants a guinea pig and she wants to be a knight of the round table.
Yeah.
So it's not a big ask. It's not a big ask. And she keeps undermining her own plans to achieve those goals. But it's set in a family context with a mum who's pretty depressed, a family that belongs to a church with some pretty significant expectations. And it's a story about how the family coped through a couple of crises.
Yeah, and I have to say I really loved it. The dysfunctional family and all the dynamics, and that was really great. Just wondering, because like you said, Christadelphian is quite a maybe not as well known religion. I had heard of it because I remember when I very first started out after school in the workforce, I worked with someone who was in that religion, so sort of knew a little bit about it. Is that something you'd had any personal experience with?
Yes, I grew up in a Christadelphian
Mm,
family. So when I was thinking about the context for writing a family story, I wanted something that the family had to deal with that was different from families around them.
mm,
And I thought, well, actually, that's a difference I remember, even though I'm getting on a bit
mm.
now, I still remember growing up in that family in those circumstances. So I called on some of those memories.
Yeah, and the guinea pigs, and all, is that something that you were wanting when you were growing up?
Oh, yes, I think a bit like Dorcas, about every 6 months I had a new plan for my
Yeah.
own life. And I'm sure it included vet at some stage. We used to collect stumpy tailed lizards when I was little and paint eyes on their fat tails so it looked as though they were walking backwards.
Oh,
And so anything to do with animals, I certainly went through a stage where that was pretty important.
mm. And I've got a few people watching, so just wanted to remind people watching again that if you do have any questions, please type them in comments and you'll have a chance to win a copy of The Family String, thanks to Ultimo Press. Kelly, she says she absolutely loves the cover. It's very striking with the colour choices. Is that something you had any input in?
No, not really. I took advice from the publisher about that. But in the story, at one stage, Dorcas helps her older neighbour to paint all the pillars in his shed,
Mm,
and she thinks one of every colour would be terrific. And
mm.
so that's where they picked that idea up from, I think.
And I love the title as well. Was that your title, or is that one the publisher?
Well, no, again, the publisher was really helpful about that, because the original title was going to be String Theory.
Okay.
And much as because there's a little story right at the beginning of the book about the family string, but she pointed out that might suggest to readers it was going to be a book about science. And I thought, oh no, that makes good sense. I probably have thought that too. So I thought, no, oh wise one, you've had experience about titles, so I took advice. I think she gave me very good advice.
Yeah, no, it is a great title. Yeah. And can you tell us what was the first thought that you had when you first started writing the novel?
Oh gosh, that's a good question, because it was a little while ago now. Look, I think it was a couple of things happened at the same time. I think, first of all, I went through a little patch where I realised that I didn't have photos or much memorabilia about growing up in the 60s. I didn't have a photo album. And so when I was thinking about writing the book, I thought, well, actually describing what I remember might be my equivalent of a photo album from the 60s. And so from that point of view, it served a really good purpose. And lots of people who have contacted me have said, oh, I remember the things I remembered Peter's Ice Cream Factory, and I remembered when we got coloured telephones. And so I think it was almost creating a word picture for my own sake as much as anything.
And Kelly wonders if you have an author who inspired you to start your writing journey.
Oh, that's also a very good question. Look, I've been writing on and off since I was a kid, really. And so I've been influenced by, I'm a big reader. And as I often say to people, I've worked out that if you read a novel a week, from the time you're 20 until the time you're 80, you've still only read 3,000 books.
Yeah.
And given how many there are, that seems tragic to me.
Yeah.
So I've always been a big reader, and so I think I've been influenced by lots and lots of readers over the years.
And is there maybe something you've been reading lately that you'd like to recommend to us?
Oh, I've read some great stuff lately. I've just finished Nina Campbell's Daughters of Eve.
Oh yes, that's a great one.
Interviewed her. And in fact, today I finished Kylie Orr's book, which is called Someone Else's
Child, is it? Yeah.
I love it.
I haven't read. I've got that one, but I haven't read that yet. So
that was a page turner.
Yeah.
And in fact, as I got to each bit of the story, I kept sending her messages going, oh no, the bruises, oh no, and this has happened. So that was great fun to read. I really enjoyed that. But I read a lot of literary fiction as well. And one of my favourite books last year was a book called Cold Coast by Robin Mundy.
Oh yes, I know that. Yeah,
beautiful story about the first woman Norwegian tracker in the sort of 1920s, 30s. Beautiful, beautiful book. And recently I've read two terrific collections of short stories. One of them is Andrew Roth's collection called The Teeth of a Slow Machine.
Okay.
And he writes, I love his stories. He's got a very wry sense of humour, and his stories are clever and a bit dark.
Okay.
And he's won many, many prizes for individual stories. And the other collection I loved is Fiona Robertson from Queensland University Press, and her collection's called If You're Happy. And they were two of the best collections of short stories I've read for some years. I love them.
Oh, okay. No, that's great to hear. We always love getting lots of recommendations, so that's great. Thanks for sharing. Sharon wonders how long the book took you to write.
Actually, I started to write about 7 years ago, and I decided I would write a novel every year until someone bloody well published one. This was actually the second novel I wrote. And so I've set myself a goal of having a novel completed in each 12-month period. And so this one took about 6 months to do the first draft, and then another 4 or 5 months to, work it through.
Mm.
But honestly, life is, you just never know what's going to happen. And this was one of those sliding door story almost in the way this was published. Can I tell you about that?
Sure, yeah.
I had sent the novel to a publisher not long after I'd finished writing it, and they said, "Oh, this is under consideration." And then their staff changed and they lost it.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
so I was really devastated about that. And I decided that what I'd do, I had some advice about going to a professional editor to see if they could help, lift my work and learn from it, which was a great bit of advice. And the editor that I commissioned to look at one of my books did a fabulous job. And I thought, oh gosh, I've learned so much. So I said, could I send you another one? Could I commission another one? Now, as you would probably know, and probably lots of your listeners, if you do book an editor's time, it's a specific set of dates, and they will read and work the book through in that time frame, full stop. And I was really busy at work, and I looked at my calendar and thought, oh, I was meant to send that novel tonight, and it's not ready. And so what is the family string? I thought, look, that one's in better nick. I'll just send her that
and you
one.
sent that one instead.
And so I just sent it going, oh gosh, at least I got her something. And about a week later, she contacted me and said, oh, no, I love that book. We have to get it published. I think I know someone who might be interested. And it sort of all happened from there. So it happened because I didn't have my act together and I didn't have the book I was going to send her ready to go.
Oh, that's a great,
that for good luck.
No, that's a great story, yeah. And what has happened to your other books you've written? Are they?
Well, it's been terrific actually, because Ultimo gave me a contract for 2 books, and my second novel will come out in January next year, which is very exciting. That's called The Night and Women's Compendium, and we're talking about which might be the third. And so I'm hoping that I've got a body of work that might see light.
So your next one, is that set in the same time era, or?
No, the next one's set in the 1980s.
Okay.
In country South Australia, and I have enjoyed. I got some advice when I first started writing and went to see a literary agent that I shouldn't write books about South Australia because no one would want to buy them. And my response to that, to be perfectly honest, was And so I thought, no, I will definitely be writing about the landscape and the country and the culture that I know. And so the next one, they're not all written in South Australia entirely, but the next one is as well.
Yeah, okay, no, that sounds great. And could you tell us a little bit about any research you had to do for the family string?
For this particular book, I didn't have to do a great deal because I was able to draw on my memories of growing up Christadelphian. And my mum is still a member of that church.
Okay.
They are totally wonderful to us. She lives in a Christadelphian aged care facility, and it's about the best quality care you can have.
That's great.
So, but the other thing I drew from is my very first career, I qualified as a social worker. And so my first career was working with troubled families. I worked for what used to be called, this is how old I am, when I was a social worker in Melbourne, it wasn't the government that investigated child abuse, it was a charity called the Children's Protection Society.
Okay.
And so I drew on those days in terms of the experiences I'd had with families. I was always particularly interested when a kid like Dorcas in the story ended up almost having to be the adult in the relationship. So I really, the book is essentially a drawing on those experiences.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned your mother. Has she read your book?
Yes, she has. She has. In fact, what I have learned from writing a book is that the vast majority of people who know you are pretty sure the book is about them.
Yeah.
And so there've been a lot of people who said, you know,
Yeah.
including my mum.
Mm.
And I've had to say to her, I won't give the plot away, but there is a very tragic things happened in the story. And I've said to her, did that actually happen in our family? Because I don't think it did.
Yeah.
And also, Mum, you are not a 5'10" red-headed hairdresser. You barely scrape 4'11" and you're a nurse. So I think, no, Mum.
And Dorcas is an interesting name. Sharon said, how did you choose the characters' names?
Well, all of the children's names come from the Bible.
Okay.
So Dorcas is a character in the Bible.
Yeah.
And she was considered a very, very good woman who cared for others. And when she died, they sent for Peter to come and to raise her again.
Mm.
And so it is a very unusual name. It's not one. I think one of my key performance indicators might be if there are lots of babies christened Dorcas.
Yeah.
So it's a biblical name. They all are Ruth and Caleb and Daniel and Dorcas.
Okay. No, that's great to know. And could you tell us about how you got into writing? Is it so, like you said, when you were a child growing up, you did a lot of writing, did you? And
yes, when I was a kid, a bit like Dorcas, had lots of ideas about what I do, but writing was always one. And I used to write a lot of poetry. And as a teenager, some of my poems were included in anthologies, which was terrific. And then in my early 20s, I wrote some short literary fiction, and that appeared in Social Alternatives and Southerly and a couple of other journals. And then I started a consulting practice, which pretty much absorbed most of my time and energy. And as a consultant, you spend your life writing reports. And so it was in my mid-50s, I just woke up one day and thought, when were you thinking you'd be writing this novel?
yeah.
At 55, it might be time.
Yeah.
And so it just felt like the right time to start and be determined about it.
And then how hard or easy sounds like you'd written a few books, am I right, before you got one published?
Yeah, yes. In fact, I was working on, I think, finishing my 6th novel.
Yeah.
When this one was accepted. So yes, as I just tried, I thought I would just set myself, I guess because of my consulting work, I was used to working to deadlines, and I thought if I let myself off the hook, it won't happen. So I just set a book a year target.
Yeah, yeah. And when you are writing, do you have any daily targets or times of writing or anything like that?
Well, until recently, I'm trying to pull my consulting practice back now, and I'll probably, in fact, wind it up at the end of the year. So until recently, I really could only write Sundays because my job meant that from early in the morning till late at night, I was pretty consumed with clients' work. So what I did was when I started writing, I decided to stop working 7 days a week and keep it to Monday to Friday, and then I would read on Saturday, and then I'd write on Sunday. And so for 7 years now, I've got up Sunday morning, had my coffee, and started writing, and then I write through till the roast is ready on Sunday.
Okay. And what do you hope readers will love about the family string?
What I really hope is actually it will cause feelings, I think, because I've read a lot of books where I've thought maybe intellectually interesting, but I don't feel touched by them.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that, because Dorcas is pretty funny, so I'm hoping that people will have a good chuckle. And then I am actually hoping they will shed a few tears.
Yeah.
And the end of the book in particular, I think it's a bit, you need tissues, I think.
And I have to say you did a good job with that. I really felt invested in the characters and really wanted to know what was going to happen to them and everything. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
that was
Yeah.
great. And have you had any maybe strange or weird feedback from any readers that you could share with us?
I haven't had. I've had conflicting feedback,
Yeah.
more strange reactions to the characters, and so. In fact, a number of men, including men that have interviewed me on radio and other places, have said, "Boy, that mum was a real piece of work.
Mm.
Couldn't relate to her at all."
Yeah.
But I've had other women who've said, "Look, thank you, because what you've done is describe what it feels like when you are depressed
Mm.
and where you feel really distanced and
Mm.
there's no energy left in the tank."
Mm.
And so I've had quite strong reaction. The good news is, universally, people pretty much like Dorcas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the parents have had very mixed reactions to them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. And if you could be a character from your book for a day, who would you choose to be?
Oh, Dorcas for
Yeah.
sure. People, quite a few people ask me, were you as naughty as Dorcas when you were a kid? And the answer is no. I think I was really boring and well behaved. And my mother always says, even now at 86, "Oh, Denise didn't give us any trouble, really." And whereas Dorcas just constantly gave
Yeah.
her mum trouble.
Yeah.
So I just loved, I think there was probably a bit of who I wish I had been in that character.
Yeah. Yeah. And what have you found so far to be your favourite part of your publishing journey?
Oh, actually, I know this might sound odd because it's not everyone's experience, but I have loved being edited.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. You get these huge reports with structural edits that and professional editors don't muck around. They just go, "Terrible, terrible, fix that, get rid of that, don't want that. What were you thinking there?" And I just absolutely love it. To have clever eyes look over your work and help
Mm.
you see what doesn't work, I just think is so. I think I would keep writing books just to get the
To get
structural
yeah.
edits at the
That
end.
yeah. I'd say that's probably quite different than what a lot of authors would say, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think again, I think I've been lucky because I work the consulting world with senior executives, which is where I work. Is a pretty, it's a pretty rough place sometimes,
Mm.
and so you develop a thick skin. And so, but I have had friends that have had their first report and they've needed a Bex and a good lie down. They've just,
Yeah.
they've thought, "That's it, my life's over."
Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah. And without any spoilers, do you have a favourite part of the book?
Oh, one of the scenes I quite like is when Dorcas is in trouble because she hasn't studied for her Sunday school
Yeah.
exams, um, and she's locked in the laundry, and her little brother comes to see if she's all right,
Mm.
and she pretends she's got birds and lovely things happening in the laundry, and he
Yeah.
doesn't believe it, and he threads a snake, a lolly snake, through for her, but she points out it hasn't got a head by the time she gets it. So I've always been kind of fond of that because she was thrown into the laundry because instead of studying, she had to write some practice answers for her exam, and she's got a fairly vivid imagination
Yeah.
when she doesn't
Yeah.
know what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that was good fun to write that.
Mm. Yeah. And do you find that the characters stay with you after you've finished writing?
Oh, Dorcas will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. There's
Yeah.
no way she will ever leave me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is she someone that you may want to write about again?
Interestingly, I'm not sure that my publisher will want me to, but quite a few of my readers have said, "Could you please write the next book because we want to know what happens to her. We
Yeah.
want to know if she's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Is she going to be all right?"
Yeah.
So no, I as I said, don't think that ultimately I've got plans for me to write one, but I could because
Yeah.
I am so I'm so familiar with her that I could write the next chapter of her story.
Yeah. No, that would be great to see what happens to her. Kim wonders if there's any other genres that you'd like to write.
I have actually written one very unusual murder mystery, but it's not a very typical one, and it's epistolary, so it's a series of documents and letters.
Okay.
And that was really good fun to write. I enjoyed that. Otherwise, I think, what Alt might say to me is that I sort of write in a funny place between commercial and literary.
Yeah.
And in fact, they said that's why it would have been hard for me to have found a publisher, because I'm not
You're a bit
clearly
in
just
between.
commercial fiction,
Yeah,
and I'm
a
not
little bit
literary.
in between.
So whether I want to push to go one way or the other, I'm not sure. But at the moment, I'm enjoying a couple of my books. The protagonists aren't kids; they're people in their 70s,
Okay.
and I'm enjoying writing because I think we need some older heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in fact, the book that's coming out in January, I think the best character in the book is 75. It's been really terrifically good fun to go from writing with a 12-year-old's voice to writing from a 75-year-old.
Yeah, it's a big change. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It's been great chatting to you, and totally recommend everyone go out and get a copy of The Family String. It's a really great read. And good luck for your future books.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your time this evening.
Is there a way that people can keep in touch with you?
I'm on, I have a website, just my name will find that. And I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter. My name will find me on both. I've recently tried TikTok, but I'm not sure it's the right world for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and thanks for the people who joined in and asked some questions.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.